noticed I needed to take my jacket out to dust down to meet the crowd, which is not unusual for colleges and universities today, which is just fine. I'm a biz cash guy from the get-go. This is my first presentation as the entrepreneur in residence here at Westchester, and quite frankly, didn't know really where to start it from a level set standpoint. So I'm going to try to take a couple minutes to tell you a little bit about me and how I got to where I am today, which, by the way, at 63 years of age is still working for a living, thanks to the dot-bomb implosion. Some of you might not be old enough to even know what that is, but we'll get there. But I've had a really great run at doing a lot of really great things. And the purpose of this presentation today, hopefully, is to get you excited about the idea of doing something yourself in business. It's not for everybody. And by the way, if I mention the E word, entrepreneur, more than once or twice, I apologize. This is not about trying to convince you that you need to become entrepreneurs. We will probably not have much of a discussion of whether or not entrepreneurs are made or born. This is about people who want to decide what they want to do with their life and how they want to do it and how they want to live it from a business perspective. And I would suggest to you that the value of this presentation will be based solely on your input and your involvement. I'm not one of these guys that basically says, hold all your questions to the end. If you have a question, you better ask it when you see it on the slide, because 30 seconds later, at 63 years of age, short-term memory loss kicks in. The mind is the second thing to go. Ouch. Nobody got that one, Michael. Okay. All right. Or they're being very polite, one or the other. Okay. So I really would hope that this presentation will end up going where you want it to go and not necessarily where the slides go. If we never get off the third slide and you're happy, I'll be happy. And I have no set. I know that there are some probably strict time rules here in terms of how much time we're actually allowed to have, but I don't have anywhere to be until home, and home is in Westchester. So by coming here this afternoon, I've just taken the shortcut. I don't have to drive the 202 corridor. So let's get started. A little bit about my background. Born and raised in a little tiny town called Newton, New Jersey. Anybody ever heard or been in Newton? If you drive as far north as you possibly can in New Jersey and turn left and go almost as far west as you can, you're in a little place called Sussex County, the county seat of which is Newton. When I was born and raised there and went to high school there, there were about 8,000 people in Newton and a high school of about 800 kids. I took a partial football scholarship out of Newton, New Jersey, and by the way, more cows than people in the county my entire life that I was there. True story, true story. It was the dairy capital of New Jersey. That's where almost all the milk came from in New Jersey, Sussex County. I went to a small college in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania called Moravian. I turned down a full scholarship at a number of large universities for football, and decided to go to a school where I felt a little more comfortable. And so instead of going to a Syracuse with 30,000 kids, I went to Moravian with 1,250. It turned out to be a great decision because fortunately I had two parents. My mom had gone to college. My dad was in the Navy during the war and never got to college, but built a very, very successful business. And they were the kinds of parents that wanted to make sure that their kids did better. My brother was a wrestler in high school, took a full scholarship to Penn State. I don't want to say that had anything to do with his success, but just to give you a ruler to measure it by, today he manages $12.5 billion of venture capital in 9 funds, all of which he's the primary owner of, right here in Philadelphia. The largest venture capital guy in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, the largest venture capital guy probably in the history of venture in this area. Very, very successful. I, on the other hand, went to Moravian College, got a bachelor's degree in psychology. I would have actually minored in business, but when I went to college, Moravian didn't offer minors. I had the credits, I had the courses, but too bad, pick one or the other. I went to graduate school at a little place called Glassboro State College. If anybody knows anything about Glassboro, you know it ain't Glassboro anymore. It's Rowan University. It's amazing when you write a big enough check what can happen in the world. They'll actually change the name of institutions on your behalf. So I went there for a master's in certification in school psych. I left and became director of undergraduate residence at the University of Pennsylvania for 1 year, where I ran what's called the Quadrangle, the largest undergrad residence component on campus. I loved the work. I hated Penn. I hated West Philly. I hated, frankly, Penn kids. I was a square peg in a round hole in all of that. And it wasn't them, it was me. On the rebound, I left and joined a small company called IBM, where I seemed somehow to last 4.5 years. And then I left to start selling Apple II computers. Anybody here know what an Apple II computer was? Very few of you. I'm old. This is a long time ago, guys. And I built a very, very successful technology business that reinvented itself as the technology changed, and I was very, very lucky and very, very, and by the way, I don't care how smart you are, let me just give you the first profound piece of advice. You're much better off being lucky than good, because serendipity is just one of the most amazing things that helps people launch into situations that's possible. I mean, it just happens every day, and most people don't think about it. But that said, let me fast forward out of IBM into my own business. Business got acquired 12 or 15 years later by Deloitte & Touche. They asked me to start their e-business consulting practice. Imagine going into the 4th largest professional consulting services company in the world and being in front of partners who can't spell E. And by the way, don't want to. It was an interesting challenge that I managed to survive for about 2 years, 3 years. I left there and went to Safeguard Scientifics full-time. I had been doing technical due diligence for them for about 15 years on technology deals. And to this day, my office, although I have nothing to do with Safeguard anymore, I spun my business, Safe Hatch, out of Safeguard. The resemblance in the names is intentional. Safe Hatch is a business acceleration and corporate advisory services business. I help companies grow faster. It's that simple. Corporate advisory services is usually applied to publicly traded but distressed companies. I have clients all around the country, including one right here in Westchester. And business acceleration services is usually applied to younger companies that are ready to launch into a marketplace but just need all the support they can possibly get. And that's what I do full-time. And what I do full-time in my part-time leftover time is I co-founded and run Keiretsu Forum Mid-Atlantic. Anybody here, other than the guys that were at lunch, anyone here ever heard of Keiretsu Forum before? World's best kept secret. Keiretsu Forum, for those of you that know what an elevator pitch is, here it comes. Keiretsu Forum is the world's largest private equity angel investment group with over 900 members in 26 chapters on 3 continents who have invested almost $350 million in early stage companies in the last 12 years. There is no angel group anywhere in the United States that comes anywhere close to our total membership. And by the way, 16 of the 26 chapters are in the United States, and they represent 90% of the membership count. 10% offshore in the other 10 chapters, which probably wouldn't shock you. And no angel group anywhere has invested anywhere close to $350 million. There are many groups that say they have, but they haven't. We meet in Philadelphia every month. If you have any interest in entrepreneurship or private equity investing, you should contact Dr. Zimmerman at the Cottrell Center, who will arrange for you to get a guest pass to come to a meeting. We meet in Philadelphia almost religiously on the 4th Wednesday of every month. That only changes around holidays, which typically are September, November, and December. Turns out that November we get a pass, so we're actually in the 4th. So we're going to meet on the 24th next week, the 4th Wednesday of November, whatever date that is, and the 3rd Wednesday of December because of Christmas. Okay? Anybody want to shout out anything before I push the button and move forward on these slides? Okay. So you now know who I am. You should be thinking, not that we'll obviously, with this size audience, we won't have an opportunity to get everybody to introduce yourself, but as you ask questions, I would really appreciate it if you would take the time to introduce yourself, tell me what your major is, maybe even tell me why you showed up here today, and then ask your question and we'll go from there, okay? I'd be happy to take advice from anyone that wants to address the second and third bullet points on, you all took time out of your very busy school schedules to come here today. It looks like there's at least 50, 60 of you here in the room. Why did you come today? Why are you here? This wasn't required, was it, in any of your classes? And your students, they had to be here. Well, okay. So those of you that are not Dr. Zimmerman students, why are you here today? No, just kidding. Anyone want to, wow. Yes?
My name is Ron Zaleski. I'm a finance and economics major.
Hi, Ron.
I just wanted to hear your voice and understand your mentality on being an entrepreneur. You've lived a life through your goals and successions. I just want to hear your point of view.
Okay. Did you all hear that? Okay. Well, not very many people want to hear my voice. It's, the psychologist in me was not wasted. I know, by the way, I know that I have a very imposing physique. I know I have a very deep and strong voice. And I know that I intimidate people just by standing in front of them. And I have worked consciously for years and years to try to temper that, and no matter what I do, it doesn't work. And so I tell people, by the way, I know you're probably going to be intimidated because I'm a big guy and I have a loud voice and blah, blah, blah. I'm a pussycat at heart. And everybody goes, yeah, sure you are. No, I am. I will tell you the true story. My brother is a successful venture capitalist today because he makes investment decisions based on business and based on metrics. And I make, and by the way, the reason most angel investors have mixed results and success in their investments is because we get too emotionally involved in the decision of writing the check. And by the way, if you look up the emotional angel investor, my picture in the dictionary is there in full profile, and that's not what you really want to be. There's a time and place for emotion, and it really should have very little, if anything, to do with the investment decision of getting into a deal. And I've been very fortunate that I've had deals. I told some folks at lunch that in my consulting practice, I had a year where I spent 3.5 months of my time and ended up with a 7+ digit return. And that 7+ digit return then funded about the next 5 years where I went 0, 0, 6 digits, 0, 5+ digits kind of thing. 7 digits in a single person consulting practice is a lot of money. I now have a practice that has 9 people in it, all 1099s, all partners, it's kind of eat what you kill. And it's an interesting business, and it's getting to be very, very popular, and we do some special things. But I appreciate you thinking that I'm an entrepreneur. I think I'm one too. I look at people, I mean, it's very easy to point at some people and know that they're entrepreneurs. My brother's clearly a pioneer and an entrepreneur in the venture capital space. I'm still struggling to figure out what my exit strategy is, so I'm not 100% sure I qualify. But thanks for saying that. Anyone else? Are they all your students? Okay, just kidding. Yes? Did you all hear the question? No? Yes? Yes? Okay. The answer is, truthfully, that there's absolutely no difference in how you execute and run a nonprofit versus a profit. The only difference is, at the end of the year, there are no dollars left over to spend in the nonprofit. They've all been spent, and they've all been allocated away so that they protect the typically 501c position of a nonprofit from the standpoint of not having any taxable income or quote-unquote profits. And by the way, there is no rule that says that a nonprofit can only raise so much money or earn so much money. They just can't make any profit. And that's really the only, I mean, they register as a different legal entity and they finance slightly different. But at the end of the day, they're businesses that are run by hopefully very sharp executives who understand how to manage the finances and how to run the business. And the only difference is that rather than taking profits and giving it back to shareholders, they take what we would call profit and use it for a better purpose, and that's why they exist as a nonprofit. That answer your question? Okay. All right. I have a question for you. How many different types of companies are there? And what kind do you think you'll be involved with? Anyone? Interesting. No one. Yes?
Well, to answer the second part, I think 90% or something around there are sole proprietorships. So that would be most likely what we become involved in.
Sole proprietorship. That's great. That's one of the answers to the first part of the question. And you're right. About 85% of the businesses in the United States are very small businesses, typically what we refer to as mom and pop. Might not be just a single proprietor, but there are lots of those. But they could be mom and pop, so it could be a family business. Any other guesses? Okay, so sole proprietorship. Sir.
There's two owners, if I'm not mistaken. We sole proprietorship, partnership, and corporation.
That's a good way to split it up. Very good. Thank you. Only from a pecking order standpoint, typically in size of company and number of people that typically work in it, do those areas have any real distinction? So we have, you've heard the term SMB, small to medium business, okay. And then we have enterprise or large corporations. You know, you've heard the term, I'm sure, Fortune 1000, Global 2000, et cetera. So we have these mega companies. Those can be product companies. Those can be services companies. Deloitte & Touche is one of the world's largest multi-billion-dollar professional services company. Interesting thing about any professional services business, they don't have any inventory. All they have is people. And every single day, typically, every one of those people walks out to go to a client to do work, if they're not already at the client. And no one at Deloitte & Touche knows if they're ever coming back. Talk about challenge of running and managing a business. Professional services organizations have real critical issues because their people are their business. When you come down to that middle group, partnerships or whatever you want, they can, by the way, they could be LLCs or they could be C Corps or L Corps or regular S Corps, whatever you want. But they typically suggest that there is a population in that business that could range, depending on who you talk to, anywhere from 500 to about 150,000 people. That's a huge range in that middle stage. And then we get down to what we refer to as sole proprietorship, mom and pop. The vast majority of business in the United States, 85 or 87% of them, are companies that have less than 24 employees, including the owners and managers. And it's true that at some point in time, the vast majority of us will likely, since there's 85%, the vast majority of us will probably go to work for one of those and or start one. Not everybody can start Facebook, but Facebook started in a dorm room with 2 guys. And before it left the dorm room, it had 5 guys. And then they made that strategic move to California, and before you know it, they had 15 guys. And now they have thousands of guys. Wouldn't it be nice if the stock were performing as well as the company was? By the way, just an aside, I own no Facebook stock, I never bought any Facebook stock. At lunch, I told a small group of you that I don't get social media. My generation will never get social media. I do get, and I have an investment in LinkedIn. I get it. And for those of you that can't spell LinkedIn, get there. For those of you that love Facebook, tell me how you make money there consistently. Show me how you make money that somebody can't just come along 15 minutes later with a slightly different twist to your widget and take your marketplace away. I don't get it. But your generation does, and by the way, the other bad news that I also shared at lunch is today my generation controls about 80% of the revenue, the capital that's available in the United States, and your generation controls about 20. That's going to change. So today, the social media world, from a growth perspective, has issues because while 20% is a huge amount of money, it's not 80. And with the exception of LinkedIn, I know of no other social media play that specifically is designed to address me. And I don't mean that I have the money, but my generation has the 80%. We are the 1%ers, wherever they are. Any Mitt Romney fans in the room? We need to change bad. And I'm not a political guy, but I know we need to change bad. Okay, so good answers there. Just from we're going to do this from what I call the 10,000-foot level. I'm not going to write a business plan on a napkin and ask you guys to fund it today. By the way, those days are over. Nobody writes a business plan on a napkin anymore. And yes, I was there before the dot-bomb implosion, where I literally saw guys walk into a room to VCs, sit down, not a napkin, sit down with a piece of paper, college ruled line paper, draw a diagram and talk to it and get funded. I saw it. My brother and I funded a company. My brother called me up one day, quick story, when he had an office in Morristown, New Jersey, and my office was about a mile away from where it is now, but on the same street in Wayne, half a mile away. And he said, "Can you come read a business plan? It's important." So I dropped everything and I drove to Morristown, New Jersey. And my brother was sitting in his office and he handed me 6 college-lined ruled pieces of paper on which was a handwritten business plan. 6 pieces of paper. I read them. My brother was on the phone. He hung up the phone. He looked at me and said, "What do you think?" I said, "Where's the rest?" He said, "That's it." I said, "You're kidding me." He said, "No, that's it. Do you think it could work?" I said, "Yeah, I think it could work." He said, "Good, because they were here this morning and I wrote a check for $100,000 to get them started." So I said, with the S word explicative first, I said, "If you already wrote the check, why did I have to drop everything and come running over here to read the business plan?" And my brother very calmly looked at me and said, "Because if you didn't think it would work, I would have stopped payment on the check." True story. Company that was called, none of you have ever heard of it, company was called Water Online. 2 guys who came up with the idea of creating, in essence, what we would today call a portal for all businesses related to water and all information related to water. And they burned through that $100,000 in about 5 months, and we introduced them to one of the funds on Safeguard Scientific's campus, Internet Capital Group, and 3 of the founders of ICG pooled another $100,000 together. And then 6 months later, we walked them into Safeguard Scientifics, who bought out, basically paid back our $100,000 investments. We kept all of the equity we had in the company, and Safeguard took it over. And about 9 months later, IPO'd the company, not as Water Online, but as another company whose name I won't mention right now. But let me just say that I controlled 320,000 shares of equity stock in each of my niece and nephew's trusts, which is where we put the equity pieces of that original $100,000 investment. And the day the stock opened at 10 and went to 55, I sold 50,000 shares in each of the trusts for $50. You do the math. Not bad. Okay, sorry, I digress. Your company. I would like to suggest to you that no matter what your product is or if it's a service, this is all it takes. 4 little eclipses on a purple background. And if you don't like purple, make it blue. Okay? Dr. Zimmerman knows very well that I do a lot of technical due diligence, and I've developed a model to analyze a business that breaks down into 4 pieces, kind of similar but not quite, but a model that's never failed. But this is your business in a nutshell, right here. And I'm going to challenge each and every one of you today by telling you that not one of you have all these skills. Not one of you is capable of successfully building a business and covering everything you need to successfully grow it, manage it, and run it. By the way, beyond a sole proprietor or, mom and pop type business. It's just not going to happen. None of us are smart enough. A little bit about products, business versus services. You heard me make a comment about Deloitte & Touche. A product-based business almost always gets greater valuation than a services-based business. Why? Anybody want to guess? What is it about a products-based business that makes people feel comfortable? Michael? Well, it's the financial statement, but it's the product itself. You can reach out and touch it. Here it is. This is what I make. Here's my widget. Here's what I do. As opposed to, I come in, I wave my magic wand, my services, and I fix your business magically. And I can do it in 3 months, and I snap my fingers, and you're all done, and your business is fixed. It's tangible to intangible. Professional services, while people in the services really can tell you it's tangible, it's only as tangible as the quality of the people that deliver the service. Many years ago, when it was very common for the Accentures and the Deloittes and the Coopers of the world to charge companies $40 million to install $10 million of enterprise-wide software like Oracle or SAP, the quality of those services were based on the quality of the professional team that went in. And a number of those firms got hit with incredible lawsuits from companies where the projects were failing because the professional services company, as they grew, couldn't train enough people fast enough, so they were bleeding some of the top people out of projects to move them into others and backfilling them with rookies. And then they made the mistake, because they were using the company's corporate email system to email back to headquarters, that they were pulling people off the project and putting other people on that weren't as qualified. And so it was real easy for these corporations to lose lawsuits in a big way. So a little bit different there. One quick comment about selling your time, which is pretty much when I started Safe Hatch and a number of other businesses in the past. Really, the only thing I had to sell was my time. Every hour you don't sell is lost revenue. Every hour you give away is lost revenue. Every hour that you invest in a company that can't afford to pay you is probably lost revenue. You just never know. But the point is that your most valuable asset, and I can look back on my life, and I think I made this comment to one of the people earlier today. I can look back on my life and I tell you, God's honest truth, I have almost no regrets. The one regret I have is I, excuse my language, pissed away so much time. I was a mediocre student in high school. I was a mediocre student in college. I was a really good student in graduate school for some reason. I was really good in postgrad, but I wasted so much time, it's unbelievable. And I am not the poster child for procrastination, but I do procrastinate to this day. A month ago, this past Tuesday, I was involved with my wife in a very serious car accident, broke my neck. 5 minutes or 2 minutes after the accident, there was an EMT helping my wife. I didn't know I'd broken my neck. I thought I'd broken my ankle. A state policeman pulled up in a car. He walked over to the local policeman, so it was probably 10 or 15 minutes after the accident. And I overheard the state policeman turn to the local officer and say, "Where are the bodies?" And the police officer said, "There are no fatalities, everybody's alive." And he looked at the car that my wife and I were in, and he said, "I don't know how it's possible." And he didn't realize I was the driver of the car. So I can just tell you, I'm happy to be here today. I'm happy to be alive. And I've gotten a little less tolerant of wasting time, but I still have to work on the procrastination. Sir? What car was it? I was driving a budget rental car. That's the other part of the story. I had rented a Ford Escape. When I got there, Grand Junction, Colorado, they didn't have any small SUVs. So they upgraded me to a GMC Terrain, whatever that is, but it's much bigger, much less gas efficient. So I wasn't happy that they upgraded me until 20 miles out of Grand Junction, Colorado the next morning, where that car probably saved our lives. So stuff happens, and you know it can be game changing, but life typically does go on if you survive. Okay, so you're going to build this business. At some point in time, you're going to need some money. How many people here watch Two Broke Girls? Nobody. One. Okay. We brought that up at lunch, because one of the people that joined us at lunch has a business idea to create a bakery. I basically said, you should be watching Two Broke Girls. First of all, it's funny, very funny sitcom. It's a little racy, but it's funny. And there's a real story there. I mean, because of the two main characters, how they came together and what they're trying to do to build a business. And it actually is, there is an entrepreneurial message in almost every half-hour episode. I wouldn't change your life just to watch it, but you could also, you know, obviously you could download it as a torrent, stick it on your computer, and watch it at free time. There's lots of different ways that you can finance your business. Bootstrapping is the most common. Do it yourself. Put your own money in. I'm working with an entrepreneur right now who will be presenting his business at the Keiretsu Forum meeting next Wednesday, who has $660,000 invested in his business. We call that, investors who are looking at deals, we call that skin in the game. We like a lot to work with entrepreneurs who think so much of their business that they've invested not just their time, but their real money. Most entrepreneurs invest their time and they think everybody else should put the money in. When we see an entrepreneur who believes in what he's doing so much that he has self-funded it to the tune, by the way, raising $1.8 million, of which $600,000 is reserved for the management team and previous investors. So he's actually only raising $1.2 million. And of the previous money they raised, he put in $660,000, and he and his board members are each going to put $100,000 in that $600K piece. That's impressive. That's bootstrapping. That's how you get a business started. Now, how did he do that? He started a business before that. He's a serial entrepreneur. There was a liquidity event. He cashed out. That's how he came up with having $660,000 to put in. The way money works today is when you get an idea for a business, hopefully the first thing you do is you vet it among people you trust and love, and your family gets involved and your friends get involved, and at some point in time somebody says, you know, I really think there's something there, and so you start to test the waters a little bit, and you start collecting, you might be collecting a little bit of money from what we call friends and family, the 2 F's. It's actually 3 F's, friends, family, and fools. Because anyone who's not closely attached to you emotionally at that level is really taking an enormous gamble. He's really betting on you and nothing else. He's not betting on the company. He's not betting on whatever it is you expect to build. He's betting on you. Hence the 3 F's. Typically after that, you go out for some seed money, and seed money typically comes from the friends of the friends, family, and fools. So it expands one circle on a target line to the people the immediate group know to the group that they know. After that, you typically look for money from people like me, angel investors, people like Keiretsu organizations here in Philadelphia, Robin Hood Ventures, Delaware Crossing, LORE. Anyone ever heard of LORE? It's been around for 16 years. It's an acronym. It stands for Loosely Organized Retired Executives. Really. When it was started, half a dozen retired guys, very wealthy retired guys, were very, very active in making investments. To the best of my knowledge, LORE has not made an investment in any kind of a deal whatsoever in the last 6 years, but they're still around. Somebody still picks up the mail. So there's all kinds of angel groups. and obviously, by the way, there are angel groups who specifically invest in certain kinds of deals versus others. So it's very, very important. I'm going to digress here a little bit again. But if, in fact, you're ready to go out to raise some money for your business, it's very, very important that you do your homework. There's an organization, a very successful organization in Pittsburgh called Blue Tree Allied Angels. It's been there for 10 years. They almost always only invest in life science type deals, and they only invest in deals typically in the $200,000 to $750,000 range. So if you're not a life sciences deal, you probably aren't going to get a whole lot of interest or traction if you go to Blue Tree Allied Angels. That's just the way they are. It turns out that Keiretsu Forum invests in 14 different silos, a silo being an area of business. But truthfully, of 14, 4 get about 85% or 80%. Here we go with Pareto's law again, the 80-20 rule. So 80% of our investments take place in technology, life sciences, consumer products, and real estate. 20% in the other 10 silos. 80% in those 4. That's just where our members are comfortable. And that's where we tend to, here in Philadelphia, by the way, we do more life sciences than all the others combined. Why? Because we're on the bullseye of the life sciences companies. There are more life sciences companies on the East Coast, headquartered between New York and Washington, D.C., than any other place in the world, let alone the country. And so we sit in that bullseye. So guess what? We see many, many more life sciences deals than we see anything else. If you are successful in raising money with angels and you move to the next level, most people tend to believe, oh, by the way, at Keiretsu Forum, we typically look at A round or B round investments. That means you've been through families and friends, you've been through seed, you're ready to do your first formal round. And we typically have a what we call a sweet spot of $250,000 to $3 million. We have done deals at 5. We've written a check for 50. But our sweet spot is 250 to 3 million. Most entrepreneurs, most business owners, most CEOs who are in startup companies believe that after they get a round from angels, they have to go to venture capitalists or vulture capitalists, depending who you talk to. And that's absolutely not true anymore, because there are angel groups like Keiretsu who will do second, third, fourth, fifth rounds, depending on their size, and then syndicate them out between 900 members and other angel groups. But if you're building the kind of business that requires venture capital and it's time to go to venture, venture capital typically steps in after 1 or 2 angel rounds, and they're typically in the $5 to $500 million range. And $500 million would typically be in a life sciences pharma deal. And by the way, they don't give you all the money at once. They feed it out as you need it. Or you can go to investment bankers and see if you can't parlay what it is you have into a loan. And there's lots of ways to do that. Here in Philadelphia, anybody not heard of the Ben Franklin Fund? Ben Franklin Partners? Can go borrow on fairly reasonable terms, if they like your deal, about $250,000, up to $250,000. But you almost always have to have angels matching the number they give you. So if you need $500,000, you could get half of it from angels and half of it from Ben Franklin. Hopefully one of the things you're starting to realize is it takes an awful lot of time to raise money. And it, by the way, doesn't help move the business forward one notch. It provides the revenue to move it when you eventually have it, but it doesn't improve the product, it doesn't improve the team, it doesn't do anything for the business. You're spinning your wheels until you raise the money. And then there's the Small Business Administration and other places where, here in Chester County, Dr. Zimmerman, I'm sure, could point you to a half a dozen places that are very early stage startup friendly, and if they like what you have, they would be very interested in talking to you about perhaps helping financially. But there's a really important term in our industry that you should embrace today, and that's the term smart money, as opposed to money. There are a lot of people that invested in Facebook just because VCs were getting in, they felt they had to get in, and they had a lot of money, and they did. They provided no value to the company other than their cash. The people who invest in companies, especially, by the way, I tell people, entrepreneurs, that if you take money from us at Keiretsu Forum, we are in your face, aggressively involved investors. We take board seats, we take advisory seats, we go out of our way to find people who can introduce you to companies and people who will help you succeed. That's called active investing. People who write checks to be in my brother's $12.5 billion of funds, that's called passive investing. They don't get board seats. They don't get to be involved in the company. They happily hand checks to my brother knowing that he's got a team of professional people that are going to invest that money incredibly well, and they're going to get a great return. And that's what he does. So when you get to the point where you start thinking about investing your money, you'll have to make the decision. That's a story for part 2 or 3 of this down the road. You have to make a decision as whether or not you want to be an active hands-on investor or a passive investor. We try not to allow passive investors in Keiretsu Forum. We expect people not only to come in and write checks, but we expect members to come in and invest a lot of time. So it's a different approach. Okay, I know you're not going to believe this, and he's not in the room today, but I had the privilege of having an intern in both of my businesses, both Keiretsu and Safe Hatch, from Westchester for the last 2 years. And as part of an exchange for his internship, I spent what I would consider a significant amount of time working with him on his business plan. He had a plan, he knew what he wanted to do, and we spent countless hours crunching numbers to figure out how he had to structure that business to be successful. And from the day I met him, he already knew he was going to be in this business. He already knew how he was going to raise a little bit of money he needed to get started to buy some equipment. He had a bank lined up for a small business loan, and he had a partner. And one of the things I said to him, probably after the first year when we were ready to start seriously thinking about how to structure the business and whether it should be a C Corp, an S Corp, or an LLC. And by the way, I know nothing about any business any one of you are going to start, and I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes time to create the first legal entity of your business, it ought to be an LLC, period. And by the way, it ought to be an LLC in Delaware. Unless you live in Nevada, and then you should do a Nevada LLC, because Nevada is almost as company-friendly as Delaware is. And it's just that simple. Nobody needs to become a C Corp. No one's going to IPO tomorrow. No one needs to have that BS, the drag along that comes with being a corporation when you can be an LLC and get away with all kinds of growth things. And here's the great news. You get one free change for your company. So you start an LLC, you can change it to a corp anytime you want for a small fee. In Delaware, I think the fee's $200. Nothing. So for those of you that think you're going to build a company that one day is going to IPO, I think that's fantastic. Do yourself a favor and avoid all the expense. Start it as an LLC. When you get enough people that want to invest in your company that you're ready to go with a C Corp change, go ahead, change it. It's wonderful. And by the way, that slide that we just came off of, what's missing from this slide? Come on. You social networking guys, what's missing? Where's the crowdfunding? Anybody here not know about crowdfunding? Unbelievable. Wow. Okay. Your homework assignment tonight, when you get a computer in front of you, is to Google Kickstarter.com. Okay? And go find out about crowdfunding. But there's two kinds. Well, today there's one kind, soon to be two kinds. Today, crowdfunding will be what you see on Kickstarter, where people basically make donations to help companies get started. And sometimes, in exchange for the investment, you get something back. Like, for argument's sake, I need $25,000 to create the world's best PowerPoint clicker. And if you'll invest $25, when I get enough money, you'll get the first ones. The first production run, you'll all get one. That's a Kickstarter kind of deal. Notice no terms about equity, because it's illegal to raise equity, to raise funds for equity online today. Tomorrow, when the SEC and FINRA finishes the Jobs Act, there will be new websites where non-accredited investors will be able to invest in companies in exchange for equity. And it's coming. Everybody thinks it's going to happen in January. It's not. President Obama signed the law. The SEC had 270 days to implement. That would make it about January 15th. They're never going to be ready, in my opinion. I think I'm a serial entrepreneur, but what I'm really is, I'm really a serial company starter. Whether I'm an entrepreneur or not, I can't even say the word. But I'm a serial company starter. I have a team of guys building my crowdfunding site right now. And I think I have a totally unique approach that will be very different than all of the other sites that will be out there. Stay tuned for when I can tell you more. Okay, so biggest mistakes. So what I said to this gentleman, this Westchester grad with his partner, I said, you can't be equal partners. He said, absolutely, we're equal partners. We've been doing this from the day I came up with the idea. We've been working on it together. I said, you can't be equal partners. At the end of the day, somebody has to be able to put his hand up and make the tough decision, because one day, no matter how good you guys are, no matter how close you are as friends, one day, one issue, you are both going to be absolutely 180 degrees apart from each other. And it's going to have an absolutely devastating effect on the business unless one of you has the right to put his hand up and say, I'm really sorry, I love you, but we're doing it this way. I have the 51% control. Don't ever start a business with an equal partner, ever. It will come back to bite you in the butt about 90% of the time. And there are so many true historical, especially in the technology industry, there are so many true stories about how partners ended up becoming absolute vociferous enemies because they were in a situation where they ended up basically dragging a company all the way down into bankruptcy because neither one would let go and they had 50-50 control. Don't do it. Okay, so you're going to build a business, or you're going to be in a new market, you're going to be in an emerging market, you're going to be in an old market. It's perfectly okay to come out and step into a market that's very well defined, that's very mature, that just needs more help. And it could be anything. It could be consumer products, it could be professional services, it could be something else. You just have to figure out what quote-unquote something else is and then make it work for you. Okay? Or you could be the inventor of a whole new class of product that fits in a whole new class of space. Don't know. Real old book, real old. Might only find it in the library, might not even be able to get it on Google, but I recommend for any of you that think you're going to build a business, I recommend you go back and read Crossing the Chasm by Geoff Moore. It's really focused mostly on technology companies, but the basic core concepts are classic and legendary. 5 minutes? Oh dear. Okay. Here's your roadmap. And by the way, we can make these slides available. There's nothing secret in here. Here's the roadmap of how you get from point A when you came up with the idea, which, by the way, ideas are not patentable. You know that, right? Okay, can't patent an idea. Can only patent something that's real. An idea is not real. I say something a little more racy than that usually, but I'm here and Dr. Zimmerman's back there, so I can't say that. Okay. So it moves through these steps, and I'm not going to read them to you. You can figure this out. In a perfect world, by the time you come to angel funding, it would really be nice if you've already had a couple prototype installs, you've already had a couple sales, especially if you're coming to us. That tells us you're a much more mature company, and you've proven that you have a marketplace. So you could flip-flop those a little bit, but you can see that, get through that. And then we get to a result. At the end of the day, most of you are going to build what I call lifestyle businesses, whether they're single proprietor, mom and pop, or a small partnership. You're going to build a business that's going to provide you with an excellent living. It's going to take care of your family, and it's going to take care of your family as good as or better than your mom and dad took care of your family, and that's what everybody wishes to their children, and that you will wish to your children. And maybe, just maybe, your kids will love the business as much as you did, and they'll want to take it over. But what's going on in technology today, unfortunately, is that most of you could care less that dad has a multi-million-dollar meatpacking business. You don't want to be in the meatpacking business. Most of you want to be doing something that's more exciting. At least you think you do. Not all of you, and maybe not most of you. It's maybe just some of you, and that's perfectly okay. Most of us will end up in lifestyle businesses and be very happy and be very successful. I'm in a lifestyle business that I'm very happy in. My wife's not happy because she's an MBA CPA, and she hates the fact that some years I make nothing, and some years I make gazillion dollars, and some years I make nothing. And then, by the way, sometimes it's nothing, 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 and then it goes back up again. The secret is that when you make the big one, you don't splurge. You put that money away to carry you through the valleys. Lifestyle businesses are by far and away the most popular, and they work. Whether you end up investing in a franchise business, which is absolutely the perfect example of a replicated lifestyle, because you basically take it over, you pay royalties, but everything that's left is yours. Some of those points we don't need to cover today, but let's just, last two slides, I think. I have 14 more slides, but I think we're only going to get to the last two. So you're thinking about, maybe I'm an entrepreneur, I'm not sure, maybe I'm going to want to do my own business. This business plan this business plan competition that you're going to hear about today is going to have some additional perks, compliments of Keiretsu Forum that we'll talk about in a few minutes. But it wouldn't hurt you to understand the financial side of a business. Even if you're the geek or the engineer or the genius that came up with whatever it is, your secret sauce, whatever that is, it wouldn't hurt you to understand a little bit about the finance side of the business. The MBA point there is for the guy who's going to be the finance guy, who's eventually going to be the CFO of that company. And he or she may have the idea, but then he or she knows he's got to go find that geek to make it all work. Most of us would tell you that the best thing you could possibly do right out of college is go work for a company. The bigger, the better. The bigger, the better, because it's dysfunctional. And if you're really lucky, you'll niche into a spot where you have a lot of fun while you watch how the business runs, and you'll learn from the people around you. And then you're able to, by the way, pay off some college loans, put some money in the bank, and then bootstrap your own business. And you could start bootstrapping it the day before you start working for Deloitte or whoever else wants to hire you. But just make sure that the documents you sign with Deloitte or whoever it is don't own the rights to that company. Got to be very careful today. If you can, work for an industry leader. Why? Because something made them great. And it does tend to rub off. Rubs off in both execution-wise and attitude-wise. And both of those things are great. Try not to get you don't want to be the librarian at Facebook. Okay? You might want to be the data architect at Facebook if you're a geek, if you could get that job. You'd love to be the data architect at Google if you could get that job. That's just unbelievable. And so on and so forth. And I think if you get involved in a big company and you're lucky enough to be around the people that are doing some of the entrepreneurial things that big companies do, until I broke my neck, I played golf with a guy from DuPont who runs an entrepreneur fund within DuPont. They go look for companies to invest in. They go look for new ideas. They invest in them, and they nurture them, and they grow them. And then guess what? They buy them, and the good ones, and they bring them into DuPont. Or they set up an exclusive arrangement where whatever comes out of that company, DuPont has exclusive rights to. So it's out there. You just have to find it. This is one of what will probably be a few sessions like this. I assume they're free. We'll have more. We'll be doing some out at the MBA Center. I don't think we'll be doing any two-day events yet, but anything we can do to help, just let us know. That's my last slide, and we don't need to talk to that. You can read that.